In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a brilliant chat with Dr. Nathaniel Bavinton, the Innovation and Futures Manager at City of Newcastle in New South Wales. Nathaniel and I discuss his background as an urban sociologist and a social researcher, and how his interest in how cities impact cultures and societies has led to his work as a city strategist, and also sparked his interest in the smart community space. Nathaniel tells us about Newcastle, including the revitalisation that is happening there, and how the community came up with their own three-part definition for what a smart city means to them. We discuss how Nathaniel sees Australia embracing smart concepts and the opportunities, outcomes and obstacles of knowledge sharing and collaboration with neighbouring cities and local governments. We talk about the way that City of Newcastle has responded to COVID-19 and how the digital transformation and behavioural changes that were already underway in local government really enabled those responses. Nathaniel tells us about Lean In Newey, the city app that is helping not only engage and support the community, but also providing economic stimulus to local businesses as well. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trend of planning for future city needs with shared digital architecture and going beyond open data to open algorithms and open analytics. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns and smart cities. It's where we live, work and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Nathaniel. How are you today?
I'm well, Zoe. How are you?
I am very well. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. Let's jump straight in. And can you tell us about your background and what you're passionate about?
Okay, so I work for the City of Newcastle, which is an amazing mid-tier city on the east coast of Australia. It's really moving fast, so I've got a fabulous job where I look after the Smart City program and also manage a really skilled team around economy and sustainability and also nighttime economy, which is my background as a research academic. So I'm trained as an urban sociologist, probably the only sociologist with their hands on the wheel of a smart city program. So and now a city strategist, I guess, for the City of Newcastle.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us what sparked your interest in the smart community space.
So I'm a sociologist, so I've always been really interested in how communities and societies are organised. And I come at that from a perspective of how can the structures of cities produce spaces in which communities or cultures can emerge. So I'm really interested in how people connect, around how creativity works, how innovation works, and in terms of where the City of Newcastle is at right now, that's a really relevant and topical conversation because we're going through a big revitalisation push and the city really is transforming and these really great questions are circulating about, well, what does the economy of this place look like in the next century and how should we organise ourselves to take advantage of the many opportunities that are in front of us in this digital century.
And I'm quite familiar. I've had a lot of people from Newcastle on the podcast, a lot, probably 3, but I think that's a lot for, a town of...
we punch above our weight.
Yeah, exactly. And so for people that don't know Newcastle, can you give us a little bit of a 101 of, the revitalisation, what makes Newcastle, and that type of thing?
Sure. So Newcastle is Australia's 7th largest city. It's its 2nd oldest. So we've got a lot of history and obviously even before colonisation, really great Indigenous history. So we're an industrial city, but we are now probably Australia's leading post-industrial city. So we've been on that trajectory for a long time. I guess the city is commonly known for its background in heavy industry, and that's really given us this great legacy of engineering and manufacturing capability that are really well suited to the growth areas of the 21st century. So for the last decade, we've been the beneficiary of a state government push on reinvention of the city, and that started with a lot of infrastructure and investment and new transport networks, light rail, etc. But it's moving on now to how the public spaces of the city are organised, and starting to look ahead to where to from here. And that's actually the context in which the smart city narrative sort of emerged and started to gain traction in Newcastle. But look, it's a beautiful city. If any of your listeners are labouring under the a 20-year-old perception that it's a smog-filled industrial town, you got to get up. It's a beautiful city. It's simultaneously harbourfront and beachfront in our CBD. Lovely old heritage buildings, really vibrant arts community. It's a really happening place, and I'm thrilled to be leading a project like this in a city with so much potential.
Mm-hmm. I have been once, and I plan to come back.
Let me know. We'll go out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I keep saying that. And so I've just got to make it happen once the borders are all open and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I'm really keen because it's such a beautiful place and so much happening, particularly in the smart city space, innovation. That revitalisation, I think, is key to what you're doing in smart cities, which I think is just brilliant. So tell us what a smart city or a smart community is to you.
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think there's a simple answer there. So, but we asked our community that. We've been doing this since around 2014-15 is when we got started. So we've got some runs on the board, and really that question of what does it mean locally was the first big debate that we had. You would know there's no global definition. It really is up to each city to understand it for itself. And we have a kind of a working definition that has three parts. One is that it's a city that puts people first. It's not tech for tech's sake. You need to be delivering some kind of outcome for the community. Secondly, it's a city that is able to take advantage of smart infrastructure. And thirdly, it's a city that prioritises and invests in innovation and creativity. So you've got those three things, and if you picture a Venn diagram where they overlap in the centre, that's the bullseye that we like to aim for. But in that whole process, and where we've got a really engaged community in Newcastle, they're very parochial, they care a lot about the future. So we had some great debates. And I really think that the debate is more valuable than the definition. That space for conversation around what does data mean, what does tech mean, how's it changing our lives? That's really the important ongoing discussion.
And I agree. I think that debate and the fact that we can have that debate is really important, because then you actually find out what people care about. Because if no matter what the definition is, if your community doesn't care about it and they're not engaged, and you can do whatever, you can say all the things and even do the projects, but if the community isn't along for the journey, then it's not really a smart anything. It's just technology project.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, but I also agree that we need the people, and then I like that infrastructure is in that definition, because infrastructure is so important to this. It's an enabler, it has to be. And I think just not using the word technology is important as well, because then you've got your, using your assets more effectively, more efficiently, but knowing that it's not just doing the same thing that we've always done and calling it, smart, but actually smart infrastructure, and what does that mean for the community? How can we make things more effective, more efficient?
That was a really important part of our story, is because of the revitalisation push. We literally have a once-in-a-century opportunity where the whole CBD is being torn up and relaid. So that is an extremely rare event in a city. And so it really, that's part of the explanation about why Smart City, why now in Newcastle, is that we grabbed that opportunity and we're able to sort of build into the new fabric of our public infrastructure foundations, fibre, different digital connectivity, which makes everything else happen. I mean, it's not sexy to talk about really, and it's not doesn't deliver the outcome, but it enables the outcome, as you say, and that's critical.
And I think good on Newcastle for taking the opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, essentially, where you have everything, but you can start, I guess, from a blank canvas. It's not blank necessarily at all, but just starting from opening up and seeing what's there, and then making conscious decisions around how we're going to set up the infrastructure for the CBD and for the future. It's so important. And I think it is a rare opportunity, but to actually take advantage of that opportunity is also probably even more rare, because I think sometimes we miss those. And I think that's where the smart city concept, smart community concept is so important, because we can take control of that now, so then we can actually, use that for the future. And like you said, it's not the sexy stuff. It's not the stuff that everyone wants to talk about, but it has to be that foundation so we can actually build the sexy stuff on top of that. So yeah, no, really good. And we've talked a little bit about why this is important. And I think from, Newcastle perspective, let's zoom out a little bit and kind of go to Australia, because I'm keen to hear your thoughts, because obviously, as you've been going on this journey, I'm assuming you're talking to other cities, other places, what's happening. So how do you think Australia is embracing this smart community concept as a whole?
I think it's really been a very promising few years. There's been an enormous amount of activity, and so, some of it was already underway, a few leading cities quietly making inroads, but then obviously the federal government's Smart City and Suburbs program really, I guess, democratised the idea of smart city and got a lot of people thinking about it. They would have to be very pleased with the level of discussion they've generated, I think, out of that program. Look, there's a couple of speeds going on. Not all cities are at the same point, and I think that's normal and expected, and everyone has to make their own way in a sense. But it's such an important opportunity, in terms of putting my urban sociologist or urban theorist hat back on. Cities are not competing with their neighbours. We're competing globally for investment, for talent, for eyeballs, and cities really need to expand their horizons of what is possible. And I think that for me in Newcastle, the smart city, the narrative, and then the actual, I guess, the philosophy and the practice of it, when we started to put it into place, really let us dream big and think, no, well, not it. What our historical horizon might be. Well, what's Sydney up to? Can we, learn from them and adopt something? They're they're 2 hours away, and obviously a major metro. But now we have got not just our eyes on cities globally, but existing relationships with many what we call peer cities. 7, 8, 9, 10 of them around the city that we are able to learn from, and it really is it's a critical moment in history, because we know that we know the role of the city as a generator of emissions, but also a generator of culture and capital. So it's both the problem and the solution of the 21st century. But cities cannot solve that by themselves. They need to share that information. So I think that the smart city narrative, which is both inviting people to think about, well, how could we do things differently, but it's also providing this kind of global network of shared ideas and shared experiences that can accelerate that whole process. And if we're frank, we don't have long. We have to move fast to solve this.
And on the podcast, I've talked a lot about sharing and making sure we share ideas and all that type of stuff. But what do you think is the most, or from a Newcastle perspective, like from sharing your ideas with those different cities, what's the major outcome that you've seen from that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. In a couple of different spaces, I think. Firstly is that you can expand your ambition, like I was alluding to. You grow your horizon. You don't just have to do what the neighbour's doing, so you can see further. And secondly is you avoid duplication. So you don't need to go down a road that someone's been down before. And I'm fond of saying that, we want to make all new mistakes. We don't want to make the same mistake as someone else has made. That's boring and time consuming. What that requires, though, is cities that are willing to open up and share the kind of behind the scenes, warts and all reality of what's going on. And there was a moment internationally, and I feel it's passing, and it's certainly passed in Australia, where smart city was all about being very slick and polished, and that is not the reality at all. And anyone who is in this game knows that everything you do is harder than you thought, takes longer than you thought, and it's messy and it's hard, and we're trying to bring together new ideas and emerging technologies to solve new problems. Every single part of it is new, so that that is really a defining requirement, I think, is the maturity of cities to say, I am going to share what I know, but I'm going to share the true story, not the promotional image.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And yeah, I'm smiling because it's something that I've heard a lot, particularly from cities, but it's in the reality of it is it's not as easy until you have, I guess, maybe even a critical mass. So, if you've got Newcastle, but then it's not just Newcastle sharing the warts and all, it's maybe, I don't know, Moreton Bay, I'm just picking on people that I've spoken to, maybe Tea Tree Gully, then it's okay. We formed a new, I guess, culture where we talk a little bit about, not the failure culture, not being afraid to fail and sharing those things. But I don't think we're quite there yet at a critical mass where we feel comfortable to do that, particularly at a government level. And obviously I'm not trying to talk to you as well for you, but I think from a government level, actually that fear of failure is something that needs a bit of a flick, so then we can actually start to share these things.
Yeah, that some of those elements of organisational culture that get in the way, they're really the harder things to change. They take longer, they're more complex and more moving parts. And yeah, I agree. To be honest, Zoe, I don't think that our conference is the place for that. I don't think that's the format. Right. So we have the best ones when we host cities in Newcastle, and that might be regional cities that are a little bit further behind us that want to come and learn from us, or it might be when we have international guests come and we're learning from them. It's that kind of a bit more of a dense conversation. It's more, it's not so fleeting. You can really get to know and build that rapport and trust, and you're out in the field. You can show people where that thing is stuck up that fell off because you didn't fix it right or whatever. There's every city who's in this game has got a million of those stories.
Yeah, no, that's so true that there is different channels. Like a conference isn't necessarily where you're going to have those deep conversations. And also I do feel like maybe you don't want to have that very deep conversation with absolutely everybody, because there will be sensitivities. And so when you can actually talk council to council without the prying eyes of, say, a consultancy or a vendor or something, totally you can have a different conversation. And then, you can work out what you can share that's useful, because I think a lot of this stuff, it will be useful council to council because they have those same issues, but some of it's not going to be useful for the wider audience. It'll be the outcome that is. So yeah, no, I agree. I think there are definitely different conversations that are happening around, and how we make sure that we can facilitate those, and particularly I think local government to local government, and have that kind of network, like you said, the network of cities where you can have those. So yeah, that's really important. Okay, let's talk about you now. And I'm keen to hear about two questions, one around response to COVID and what's been happening, changing for you. And then let's dive into Lean In Newy.
Yeah, so COVID, no one saw that coming, right? It's been crazy times. Yeah, my team was pretty much pulled off business as usual. 80% of us were pivoted into leading the community and economic response to COVID for City of Newcastle. So in one sense, that was really great validation of the organisation's view of our team as being people who are nimble and agile and can, think quickly and can strategise on the run and all those things that have had to happen in the last 4 months. So that's great, but wow, what a set of challenges, really. So we put together reasonably quickly and released into the public a $5.5 million community and economic response, and that had a whole range of different elements in it that were all kind of calibrated around limiting the depth of the crisis, but also putting us in the best position to come out, through an accelerated recovery. So that was the obvious levers like rate relief and reduction on our tenancy fees and things like that. But we did some really cool things that I think are more in the smart city space as well. So we opened up our digital library collections overnight, really invested in them. And so that was where we already had a very popular library, 95,000 members, and now they can all access all types of online books and videos and different content. But we also made some short course education available through that, and that's been really popular, something like 400% increase. So that's been great, and we're really, happy with how that went. And so we've put some more money into accredited online training, partnering with University of Newcastle and local registered training providers. And that's for small businesses to put their staff through. It's around digital transformation and upskill. Maybe they're learning how to sell online for the first time. It's about managing through disruption. It's maybe some introduction to different models of innovation. So it's really, we've got this vision that maybe we can, it's going to be a hard slog and they're really feeling the pinch, but can we come out of this with a more future-focused small business sector? So that was kind of the thought there. The other thing that we've done that's been really instrumental is we've pulled together a city task force and made up of 17 of the biggest and most consequential organisations in the city. All of their CEOs meet regularly, and that's about charting a pathway out of the COVID crisis. And that's just been an amazing resource to bring together. There are many other things I could mention, but I guess they're the main strategic pieces.
So interesting. And I think partnerships are so important during this time. And I think that they were always important, but actually being able to enact those really quickly as well, like you've had to do, is key. And I think, that smart education piece where you can offer those training courses and focusing on digital transformation, I think is really key because, I agree that the more future focused we can be as small businesses and even large businesses sometimes, and local government as well, then, we can maybe be a little bit more resilient to some of these shocks and stresses that happen. So, really, really interesting.
Yeah, we were really fortunate in one way that the City of Newcastle, the council itself, had just moved into a new central administration centre. We only landed in it in late October, but it was premised on a really, very different model of working. Every staff member in the administration side had their own laptop, headset, and then so when COVID hit, it was just like, okay, take your stuff and go home. Like I can't even imagine how the business of the organisation would have worked if COVID had hit 12 months earlier, before we had that kind of that digital capability as an organisation to just kind of to roll with it. And that was just fortunate timing. But for me and my team, we were already very, we work anywhere already. So we just kind of went home and, figured out the online platforms like everyone else, and there's been pros and cons there, and just got on with it. There was almost no dip in activity at an organisational level. And
for other, I guess, local governments in particular, what are some of the key things that enabled you to do that? You obviously had your flexible working kind of, where you had your laptop and you could go home. But what types of, digital transformation, I assume you went through something earlier. What key pieces did you need to be able to just, pick up and kind of start COVID working at home?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess there's the digital transformation piece, but what the enablement that comes from being mobile, it's what goes into that in terms of trust of your staff, how you set up and enable interdisciplinary groups to function. So I think it's that softer behavioural change, which is, it's challenging and messy, and but it's really paid off in spades. And I think we couldn't have adapted like we did without all of that work happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. We started this new level of etiquette. It's still happening, obviously, during the time when we were recording July 6th. And things I think will stick and some will, go back to the way they were. But I think it'll be really interesting to have those conversations and actually decide what we want. Some people definitely want to go back into the office full-time. Other people want to stay at home part-time. But that flexibility, I think, is the thing that everyone kind of agrees on, that flexibility is so important. And being able to, I guess, have those systems and processes, but exactly like you said, the actual culture, which is trust, that your staff and your managers, you have that trust and you can actually work together no matter where you are, is really important.
We've just started a process of trying to capture all of the innovations that happened in the last 4 months, because so many are not, the headline and might be missed. But what are what a rich time of organisational change to learn from. You just have to look at it. I mean, I was living the homeschool dream for a little while with my 2 primary school kids, and they just flipped to online pedagogy overnight. Like, they've talked about it for 2 decades, and then it happened in 2 weeks. And many of those systems will never go back. So in terms of a sustainability and a climate change lens, the whole thing has put the lie to this idea that we can't act quickly if we need to, right? And, it's obviously a lot more complex than that, but I think there's some hope in that.
Yeah, I agree. Hope is a really good word, and I was using it quite a lot early on in the COVID crisis as well, and having those conversations. But yeah, there's hope, but there's evidence now that we can actually act quickly when we need to. I think we can have a whole conversation about that. Okay, let's talk about Lean In Newey. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is was part of our COVID response, and alongside a whole bunch of community-focused grants, this was really put the community in the community and economic response. So it's an app that has the purpose of connecting people who want to help with the places that need help the most. And so Newcastle has had its fair share of disasters over the years, from our peak employer and packing up and leaving town, earthquakes, superstorms, all of the above, and the bushfires more recently, right? So there's a lot of evidence that this town wants to support one another through these kind of challenging environments, but you don't always know where to put that energy. There's lots of examples of people rocking up after a flood with a bucket and a shovel, and not really knowing how to help. And I think often, as we saw with the bushfires, with a lot of those donations, that energy and that goodwill can be wasted or not be steered optimally. So look, I guess the idea we had was how can we make it really super easy for people who want to do something in a way that makes sense for them and at a whole bunch of different scales to do that. So basically, Lean In Newey, it's an app, but it's built on a piece of software from a Newcastle scale-up called Greenbee, and then we modified it to make it fit for purpose. And we issue challenges to the community, and they might be around formal community service, so volunteering with Got Your Back Sister or Oz Harvest or the Newcastle Dog Rescue or whatever is the organisation. Or it might be issuing challenges inviting people to help out at the scale of their local neighbourhood. So mow your neighbour's lawn, or pick them up some medicine when you're up the street, or just check in and have a cup of tea and see that they're doing okay. Or it might be around working together to find creative ways to stay connected. So start an online book group, or get some friends together and knit a blanket and donate it to an old person's home, whatever's the thing. So we came up with 50 different challenges for Go Live, and we've built these systems where there'll be this constant flow of new challenges. But what really sold it to us is that when, Zoe, you perform a challenge and you earn points inside the system, and then you can take those points and then spend them on a local business. So it was also a way for us to provide economic stimulus into our small business sector. So if you want to reduce it to an equation, for every dollar that we put through it, we generate X amount of community goodwill, but then that dollar is doubled because you match it when you go to get your 2-for-1 coffee or your half-price restaurant meal or whatever it is. So it's really a great solution, and we've had great uptake. I haven't checked today. Last time I checked, we had about 1,400 registered users already, about double that in terms of challenges complete or underway. So it's exciting, and what's great about it is that we've built this network in council who's thinking about it as a different way to reach the community. So it's just a completely new way of thinking about, well, how do we generate behaviour change in the community? How do we incentivise people to do this over that? It might be about how do we get them to speak to us about a strategy we have on exhibition, or some a piece of work that we're about to do in the city. So anything. So, for example, you can go through a street gardens process and you can plant your verge. That's happening. We're about to launch a small grants program through it where people present their idea through a short video, which is extremely low doc and new for local government who, love the form, if we're honest. So yeah, it's just really open-ended, very exciting, and we've had a great response from the community.
Yeah, no, that's so exciting. And yeah, I spoke to David on the podcast, David
Okay, sure, yeah.
When was it? October last year, I think. Obviously, this was before Newcastle fully released it. And yeah, really, really interesting stuff. So I guess I really like that, you're talking about the community and I guess new ways of engaging the community, but then also recognising its new ways for local government to operate. Because I think that a lot of what smart cities, smart communities is all about is managing that change process as well. Because it's not just here's a piece of technology, now all our problems are solved. It has to be about that change and new ways of doing things that, the status quo isn't serving us as well as it was before, and that we can move on to new things. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. And you've only just launched, right?
It's just gone past, for 4 weeks in the wild this week.
Yeah, wow. And did you have to accelerate this process because of COVID?
We came up with that whole project as a COVID response.
Yeah, wow.
So we compressed a lot of software dev work into a very short amount of time. And then the Green Bay team were excellent. Like, it was all hands at the wheel. But very pleased with the outcome. Looks slick. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can click away and find it as well. And what has the response been like from the local businesses?
Yeah, we've got about 30 plus on so far, which is great, and we're like fielding new requests all the time. And I think part of the challenge at the moment is their bandwidth. Like, businesses are extremely stretched. So that's on us. So what we're doing is thinking through, well, what are a whole range of different, I guess, applications of Lean In that we could use that would make good sense for different subsectors of businesses. So we want to grow it to 100, 200 plus businesses on there eventually. They like it. It brings people in to the store. We rebate the cost of their offer. So there's no, it doesn't hit their wallet at all. So, yeah, and I think it's a great way for them to market themselves to a really engaged subsector of the Novocastrian community, right? These are people who we know care about the city, and we know care about one another, and we know care about businesses. Like, it's a great market for them to reach.
Absolutely. And I imagine also the data that you're going to collect and be able to analyse will be so valuable as well. Yeah,
it's going to be a rich source of data, and in combination with a lot of the stuff we already collect from our IoT networks and things like that. So it does fill a gap in terms of data acquisition that we didn't really have a good line on before.
And I guess like measuring and monitoring, you'll be able to, measure and monitor, but actually see the impacts of, a certain intervention or something like that. You'll be able to see how that shifts the public sentiment, or people are really interested in a certain, topic at the moment, but not so much anymore or whatever.
Yeah. And one of the aspects of it that I am really looking forward to being able to experiment with is these digital platforms are extremely agile in how you can shape a message and then get almost immediate feedback. So it does open for us these kind of Uber-style micro-experimentations that let us say, well, is this comms language better than that comms language? What's resonating? What issues are, as you say, are of interest? What challenges are people responding to? What happens if you change the points value on things? How can you leverage this over that? How can you link things together? So it's really an exciting space.
Yeah, I guess the gamification part of that. Right. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, and I'm super keen to follow along and see how it all goes. So yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes, and then we'll continue to follow on. Okay, well, let's talk about the future quickly and tell us what the emerging trends are that people aren't talking about enough.
I saw this question on the guide, and I thought that's an interesting one. Yeah, I've got a few thoughts. I don't know if city planners and strategists are thinking enough about the impacts of some decisions. And what I mean by that is that, there's a few potential endpoints of where a smart city trajectory takes you. And in Newcastle, we're very interested in community-led and ground up rather than kind of, a top-down surveillance society type outcome. And so, it's very important for us that we think through privacy and transparency in, as early as possible in the design stages. So there's that. Another thing we're really interested in is making sure that when we build digital platforms, that we design them in a way that they can be, that they serve the purpose of lowering the barrier to entry for future applications in cost or time or complexity, so that as many people as possible can build on it into the future. So that's how we've built our internal smart city digital platform, so that, we've got one machine that solves the problem in waste, it solves the problem in water, it solves the problem in library asset management, whatever. They're all stacked on the same thing. And that means immediately you've got this kind of shared digital architecture. And we don't want that to end at the edges of our organisation. We want that to extend out into the city. So our city app, for example, has been designed in a way that we partner with other organisations and they come and work with us to deliver a new function, and that leaves some new capability in the app that another third party can then come and build on again. So it's really a very exciting collaborative co-design, but not in a workshop sense, but actually how digital platforms can be designed to fit together and accelerate one another. But in terms of what's not being talked about, I think it's beyond open data. It's around open algorithms and open analytics. So it's like we're at the point where the data's being gathered. People are saying, well, okay, the hard question, what do I do with it? How do I organize it? How do I visualize it? How do I generate something meaningful out of it? And that needs to be an open process as well, which is very different from a data sharing agreement. It's about, open spaces, test beds, those kind of sandpit environments. So I think that's where the data aspect of the city is headed. And that invites the community in to really, get hands-on and messy in the future of where the smart city is going.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think you're right. I think that's the next conversation. I mean, I don't think we haven't quite finished or even started in some cases, the open data conversation in a lot of places, and privacy as well, and how they kind of all fit together. But I think that is what needs to be next, but also that transparency in analytics. What are we doing with this data? And I think from a grassroots perspective, it will start to be questions will start to be asked from the people. And I think it will start from younger people, because they have lived and breathed this stuff and they'll wonder why we didn't ask it before, why we just accepted these things. So it'll be really interesting in the very, very near future, I think, particularly around what's happening now. But it will be really interesting.
Yeah, I think that as that, young people come through with much more familiarity and much more, I guess, capability to both know what's happening beneath the hood and to maybe be able to participate in that because they've got the coding skills or whatever, they're going to demand that, as you say. And to me, that's exciting. But I understand that different parts of all levels of government would not feel the same way. Maybe a bit of trepidation about that.
Okay. We've got a few minutes left. Let's just quickly talk about some of your favourite smart community resources. So what do you like to read, listen to, watch around smart cities? Talk to whoever you like to talk to.
You mean apart from your own podcast, of
course? Obviously. Thank you. That wasn't even a setup. Love it.
I don't know. We had a conversation before around the value of conferences for sharing that kind of that gritty. But really, I've just finished some stuff done with Smart Cities Council around data leadership, and they really have collected an enormous amount of resource and really shaped it in a way that is well suited to local government. So that's great. I think that we're a foundation member of the Australian Living Labs Innovation Network. That's another really interesting conversation. There's ASCA there. So I think these organisations who have this sort of remit to reach far and wide and bring people together, that's important. And the events that they run are important spaces for for conversation. Do you know what? I'm really inspired, and this is going to sound very navel-gazing, but I'm super inspired by the originality and creativity and expertise of my own team. Like, they're so close to me, but I learn from them every day, and just amazing interdisciplinary skills in a whole range of sectors. And what's inspiring is watching their professionalism and their desire to change Newcastle for the better. And that's replicated right across Newcastle. Really an amazing emerging innovation ecosystem. So fortunate in so many ways. In Newcastle, we've got great resources for the future.
No, that's awesome. And I think I definitely echo that. I haven't spoken with your team, but I've spoken with amazing people at Newcastle. And they're actually in regional areas kind of everywhere. But yeah, Newcastle's definitely punching above their weight, I think, because lots of innovation, lots of things just happening, I guess, and it's very active. And I agree with you in the sense of learning from your team, because I learn from my team all the time, and completely different fields, even in social media and things like that you maybe as an engineer or whatever, or academic, you don't think about too much, but then realize how much that impacts and makes a difference these days. And then the conversations that really inspire me are the ones that I have with local governments that are really wanting to make a difference. That public service is, at heart. And I've just met so many visionary people within local government and trying to make a real difference. And they are a wealth of resource in the sense that they have so much expertise in local government, but then to be pushing that boundary as well is something I think it's really special. So
I think that the time of the city is coming as well, right? So, the locus of power is moving down from the nation state to the state. And it, you just think about, I guess, climate change response, and in many places around the world, it's the city that is leading that. They're just saying, we can't wait. We're just going to get on with it. And that's going to become truer and truer as we move forward, where the city is the place where really consequential decisions are made. And it's local government is already the place that has got the closest ties to the community. So it makes it a lot of sense that those things are interconnected. And it's an exciting time to be in local government, because the toolkit has just expanded massively, and the horizons are global, as we talked about earlier, and the handbrake is off a little bit. There's more kind of license to innovate, and we're grabbing that with two hands.
No, that's awesome. I love working with local government. I really, really do. Okay, I know I have to wrap up now. That was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. And I think we could let's have a chat again, maybe in a couple of months or so, because I think you've been doing I'd be really keen to hear about some of the other things, and the audience obviously as well. It's not just about me. I would love to hear about, the IoT platforms you've got and what your other things that you're doing in the space. So let's have another chat in a couple of months, I reckon.
That sounds great, Zoe. Thanks for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
No, yeah, me too. Let's finish up with a really easy question. How can people connect with you?
Well, I'm not on a lot of socials, strangely. So LinkedIn is my main one. You just search up Nathaniel Bavinton, and you'll find me there, and we'll connect and we can start a conversation. Yeah, that would be the best way, I'd say.
Yep. LinkedIn's my jam too. So I think it's the easiest way to get in touch with me as well. Well, thank you so much, Nathaniel. It's been great to chat with you. And yeah, I really do look forward to our next conversation. And have a great day.
You too, Zoe. Thanks a lot.
Talk soon. Bye.
Catch you later. Bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.